Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. 12 people were savagely murdered in the Paris offices of a satirical magazine this week. That magazine had a history of publishing outrageously offensive religious cartoons, including cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, these attacks came less than a month after the hostage standoff in Sydney and a terrorist massacre of students in Pakistan. Here to tell us about this evolving jihadi war against the West is an advisor to the House Caucus Against Terrorism, Walid Phares, who will join us momentarily from Miami, and Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League, who joins us via phone. Bill, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Raymond.
Bill, I want to start with something that you wrote this week. You released a statement and you said Muslims are right to be angry. And you cite the, quote, disgusting record of this magazine. Okay, now these people are serial religious haters by anybody's estimation. But then you go on to quote the publisher of this magazine, Stéphane Charbonnier, and he said in 2012, Muhammad isn't sacred to me, and you write, had he not been so narcissistic, he may still be alive. Critics say you're blaming the victims. Are you?
No, not at all. I've made it very, very clear that I unequivocally condemn who's responsible, which is obviously the Muslim barbarians. But, you know, there's so many people in this country who just want to take a unidimensional view on this. You know, when a woman gets beaten up by her husband for many, many years, and one day she comes home and she shoots him, she's still the killer, and we got to get her. But we don't stop the conversation, do we? We say, I wonder why this happened in the first place. This guy, had he exercised some restraint, had he exercised self-censorship, which is a very good thing, that's the friend of liberty, perhaps he wouldn't have gone on out of his way to serially insult Muslims. Now, Muhammad doesn't mean anything to me. He's not my prophet. He's not my God. But the last thing I would think of doing is going around insulting Muslims intentionally and then acting like as if, you know, oh, my God, they're actually horrified that I insulted them. Look, nothing justifies violence against these pornographers. But they are pornographers disguised as cartoonists, and that is why no one can show on TV or in newspapers exactly the kind of toilet speech that I've seen in front of my desk over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and I have seen some of this on my Twitter feed. People have tweeted it out. But none of the news organizations, none of the newspapers, none of the broadcast networks certainly have shown this. They are very explicit, and they have religious figures, including the Virgin Mary, Jesus, Jewish figures. They strike me as anti-Semitic on their face. However, it doesn't justify murder, Bill, by any means. And I think that's what you're saying.
That several times.
So is your point then that we need to have a broader conversation about what free speech is?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you incite this kind of intolerance, you get more of it?
Absolutely. Freedom of speech is not an end. It's a means to an end. Freedom of speech is the right of political discourse of men and women in a mature way to agree and disagree about the makings of the good society. The American Civil Liberties Union thinks it means child pornography. The pornographers disguised as cartoonists in Paris and in the United States and North America in general, they think that they have a right to do whatever they want without no restraint, put no brakes on themselves, and if you don't like it, it's just too bad. Well, you know, when you keep doing that to people, somebody's going to finally say, listen, enough is enough. Now, I will never, ever justify violence. But, you know, when people riot in the streets, aren't we told by liberals? We just had rapes and all kinds of things going on with the Occupy Wall Street gang. We were told that we have to understand why they're there. Why is it that nobody needs to understand why these pornographers disguised as cartoonists do what they do, and then we get these results?
Bill, before I let you go, you said today everyone has a legal right to insult my religion and anyone else's religion, but no one has a moral right to do so. Is that your concern here, that in the embrace of these cartoonists, that somehow this would be an implied moral sanction for any attack on religious folks?
Yes, let me be very explicit. Bill Maher and Jon Stewart in this country have serially offended in the most vile and obscene way Catholics. To give you one quick example, Jon Stewart showed a picture of a naked woman with her legs spread with a picture of a Holy Family between her legs and laughed at it and thought that was cute. He is not a champion of freedom. He is the enemy of freedom. Why do I say he's the enemy? Because people, when they see that as freedom, eventually they're going to beg for tyranny. They're going to ask for order. That's what we've seen historically. When freedom is taken to extremes, that's when you see its diminution.
Thank you very much for joining us, Bill Donahue of the Catholic League, and we will be in touch in the coming days. Thanks for clarifying that, Bill.
Thank you so much, Raymond.
I want to go now to Walid Phares, who joins us from Miami. Thanks, Walid. I know we had some difficulty there. Of course, Walid is a regular contributor to The World Over and an advisor to the Anti-Terrorism Caucus here at the House. I want to start, Walid, with these two perpetrators. They screamed, Allahu Akbar. They said, we've avenged the Prophet in the wake of this terrible attack. People are characterizing this as an attack on the freedom of speech. But there is a religious imperative in play here. And should that be lost in our conversations about this?
I don't think anything should be lost. But I, as you know, Raymond, focus on the national security component. And I'm very concerned and troubled that this issue, which is between French, satirical, elite, anti-religious, yes, and then those who are very frustrated, those of this religion that have been insulted, but those who attacked have nothing to do with both. This is a jihadi organization. You just mentioned in the introduction that there were attacks all over the Middle East. There were massacres in Nigeria, in Pakistan, the attack in Australia. This is where we should link the stuff to, not to the debate about, religious versus non-religious. That is an endless debate. And basically those who attacked received orders, and those who executed, Raymond, you saw that, like everybody in the video, they did it like a military unit. They got instructions. This is an intimidation of liberal society. It doesn't matter if it's the atheists or the Catholics or other Muslims as well.
Yeah, but there is a role that these blasphemy laws in these Muslim countries are playing here, yes? And is there something in Islam that's breeding this kind of reaction that one can kill in the name of religion and to protect the things you hold dear, even though we should say blasphemy is nowhere mentioned in the Quran?
You're absolutely right. Let me put it that way. If you are asking, are there theological grounds, verses, texts, injunctions that these jihadists are using, and not even these jihadists, those who prepare them, the big commissaire, the clerics who prepare them, yes, there is. They are, they are citing something that exists. But my point, who is organizing them? Because there are many people who are frustrated because of this, the caricatures, but those who are frustrated are not killing, are not using RPG.
Sharif Kawachi, who's one of the two brothers who were part of this terrible attack, he was convicted and imprisoned on a terrorism charge in 2008. What happened here? These guys were on the U.S. do not fly list. What's the message to governments?
That's the real problem. Now we're talking about the actual issue. French government and American government have those lists. If your name is on the list, there are certain things you cannot do, like fly, like use some of the transportation, but this is it. I mean, you are not necessarily in the pool of being restricted from getting a training. I mean, he went and got a training, came back and executed. And beyond that, you and I have discussed this. The issue is the ideology. We won't know when the jihadists will move unless we know that these are jihadists. And you know what the Obama administration has done to our capacity of understanding
it also seems that this is the natural growth of these blasphemy laws in place in some of these Muslim countries. And now, as people move into the Western countries, and we see Sharia courts being erected in these Western countries, it seems it's just an extension of this blasphemy madness that we're seeing all over the world. People unjustly killed for really no offenses at all against anything discernible.
Absolutely. This is the apparatus, this is the infrastructure that the jihadists are bringing with them from the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, from the Boko Haram in Nigeria, from Ansar Sharia everywhere else. And whenever they migrate, i.e. the jihadists, not the communities, they bring with them their form of Sharia law, and of course they're going to use them in executing individuals in the West and maybe communities.
Walid, one of these brothers spent time in Yemen, we are now learning. Do you think Yemen directed this attack? You said earlier, these guys were trained. This was a military operation. They had their hoods, they knew where they were going, they had tactical equipment, they moved in, they hit their targets, they moved out. Do you believe Yemen might be behind this attack?
I wouldn't say Yemen as a country. There are two networks overseas now. It's very clear. It's either Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda has a base in Yemen, in Somalia, and other places, or it's ISIS, the Islamic State. Their training, when I've observed that video and confirmed with other experts, is identical to ISIS or Al-Qaeda. This is not your individual frustrated person who becomes a lone wolf or even a pack of lone wolves. This is a military unit. They moved in and out as if they were trained, as if they were possibly in Yemen. We don't know.
You said, Walid, that this is an act of war. How so? The media claims it's an attack on the freedom of the press.
It's an act of war by a movement, the jihadist movement, that wants to destroy our freedom and liberty. And I'm making a distinction here. Yes, it's an attack against liberty, but not by isolated extremist individuals who are frustrated, they have no job, they have no emotional life. No. This is a unit that received instructions to send a message to the West that we will shut you down. And of course they chose the one that is most controversial, but who says they're not going to come to other media? See what they've done in the Arab world, in Iraq and Egypt. They killed people who are Muslim in Muslim media who do not go by what they want. So that's why I'm saying it's not just about this caricature. They caught the most controversial, but that's the beginning.
What happens to immigration policy in the EU? Is a clampdown coming? Some of the people I'm talking to in Germany, in England, in France, they have a lot of robust conversation and they would like to see a change. Do you see that coming as a result of this attack?
Well, look, Raymond, you know, there is a rise in the protest, in the demonstrations. In Germany, in Britain, in France, you're going to see even more than that, especially if the jihadists would do more. But at the same time, there is this super lobby, the petrodollar lobby, that would block the government and tell them, if you do this, then you're going to have what France got in 2005. You remember those thousands and thousands of militants burning 10,000 cars? That's in the background of the French government. They're afraid of getting that again, or some sort of oil sanctions coming from the region. So it's a very tough call. But I would say the more the jihadists are going to strike, the more the Europeans will have to change their laws.
Very good. Walid Phares, where does this go? What are you hearing from the people on the Hill? Is there concern here in the United States that we could see this kind of small tactical attack on our own shores?
Raymond, we are having those attacks. I mean, look, the numbers. The Paris attack, 12 killed. We in Fort Hood got 13 with one man. And then in Boston, we also got those who killed and then fled, and the whole police is after. So on both sides, yes, sir, two brothers and two brothers. On both sides of the Atlantic, we are seeing this happening. My projection, unfortunately, that this is going to escalate. The more ISIS and Al-Qaeda are strong in the region, and Iran as well, the more we're going to see these jihadi cells roaming in the West.
Walid Phares, we will be in touch in the coming days. The Lost Spring, U.S. Policy in the Middle East and Catastrophes to Avoid by Dr. Walid Phares is available at bookstores everywhere. Thank you for being with us.